Millionaire catches poor mother returning her daughter's milk at the checkout and takes action that shocked everyone. The simple gesture of that woman, even though embarrassed, caught the attention of a man with so much power in his hands, who never got involved with anyone. Without thinking twice, he intervenes and changes the fate of two families with a single decision. What seemed like mere charity turned into a real story of love, affection, and new beginnings. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. We continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear in your life. Sarah took a deep breath before entering the supermarket. With Abby in her arms, a recently earned diploma and no job prospects, every penny weighed like lead. 6 months since she gathered the courage to leave Ryan and his controlling behavior. 6 months of closed doors, pitying looks, sleepless nights while her little one slept, unaware of the anguish growing in her mother's chest. The rent was due in 3 days. The notice of increase had arrived the previous week, along with the overdue electricity bill. In her pocket, some coins and a nearly empty bank account. The savings, which had lasted through months of unemployment, were finally running out. "It'll pass, Abby," she whispered to her 8-month-old daughter, who smiled, showing her still toothless gums. "Mommy will figure it out. We always do, don't we?" The supermarket was relatively empty that Tuesday morning. Sarah walked the aisles, mentally calculating each item she placed in the cart. Diapers, baby food, basic cleaning products. The small mental list shrank with each essential item she had to discard due to lack of funds. In the dairy section, she stopped in front of the shelf of powdered milk. Abby was beginning to wean, and the pediatrician had recommended supplementing her diet. Sarah picked up the can, checked the price, and after hesitating for a few seconds, placed it in the cart. Meanwhile, in another aisle, Eric was absent-mindedly checking his shopping list. A successful businessman, owner of a construction company with projects in 3 states, he was accustomed to delegating household tasks. But after Megan, his daughter's caretaker, called to say she had the flu, he needed to reorganize his schedule. "Daddy, can I have this colorful cereal?" Lily, his 4-year-old, pointed excitedly at a box with cartoon character drawings. "All right." "Just one," Eric smiled. Since deciding to have a daughter through surrogacy, the little girl had become his only true emotional connection. He kept his professional life in order, the house immaculate, but his heart closed to relationships. After the failure of his marriage 5 years earlier, he had concluded that emotional bonds were too dangerous a territory to venture into again. "And Lily's milk too, don't forget," reminded Mrs. Coleman, the housekeeper who had been with him since his adolescence, and who now helped him with his surrogate granddaughter, as she liked to say. The woman in her 60s was the only person besides his daughter who managed to cross the emotional barriers Eric had erected. In the checkout line, Sarah placed her items on the conveyor belt. Abby began to get restless, fussing in her mother's arms. Sarah gently rocked her daughter, trying to calm her while watching the cashier scan the products. $342.60, announced the attendant. Sarah felt her heart race. She had calculated wrong. In her account, there remained only $290. "I'll need to return some items," she said, feeling her cheeks burn with shame. She began separating what she could do without. The cleaning products, the package of cookies that would have been her only luxury, a new toothbrush. "You're still $12 short," informed the cashier, with growing impatience in her voice. Sarah looked at the remaining items and, with a heavy heart, held up the can of powdered milk. "This one too, please." It was at that moment that Eric got in line behind her. Lily, restless like any child, looked curiously at the baby in Sarah's arms. "What a pretty baby," said the girl, approaching. "What's her name?" Sarah, swallowing the lump in her throat, forced a smile. "Abby," she answered, her voice slightly choked. Eric, who usually kept himself detached from matters that didn't concern him, noticed the young woman's embarrassment. He noticed her trembling hands returning the can of milk, her downcast eyes avoiding eye contact, her tense shoulders carrying an invisible weight. "Daddy, isn't the baby going to have milk?" Lily asked too loudly, pointing to the can that was going back to the cashier's hand. The innocent comment hit Eric like a punch. For an instant, he saw himself at 17, when his mother, after being abandoned by his father, had to choose between lunch and dinner. He remembered the silent dignity with which she faced each humiliation. "Put the can back," he said, addressing the cashier. "It's on my bill." Sarah turned, surprised. "No, please, you don't have to. I insist." Eric avoided looking directly at her, uncomfortable with his own impulsiveness. "It's nothing." For him, indeed, it was nothing. For Sarah, it was everything. "Thank you," she murmured, holding Abby more tightly. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to." Lily, enchanted with the baby, moved even closer. "Can she be my friend, Daddy? Can I show her my doll?" Sarah smiled, genuinely touched. "Maybe another day when she's bigger." The cashier finished the transaction. Sarah thanked them again, grabbed her bags, and quickly left before the tears escaped. In the parking lot, she allowed herself to cry silently while placing Abby in the makeshift car seat in the back of her old car. On the way home, Eric couldn't stop thinking about the scene he had witnessed. "Was the lady sad, Daddy?" asked Lily, breaking the silence. "I think so, sweetheart." "Why did she return the baby's milk?" Eric thought about how to explain concepts like financial hardship and vulnerability to a 4-year-old. "Sometimes people have to make difficult choices," he finally answered. "I wanted to see the baby again," Lily commented, looking out the window. "She could be my supermarket friend." Eric smiled slightly. "Maybe. Who knows?" At home, Sarah placed the groceries on the table and sat down, physically and emotionally exhausted. That stranger's gesture had saved her, at least for today. But what about tomorrow and after? How long could she maintain this precarious situation? She looked at the printed resumes on the table, all sent without response. The elementary education. Diploma, so hard-earned, hanging on the wall like an unfulfilled promise. The schools required experience she didn't have, or hours she couldn't work without someone to watch Abby. Her phone rang. It was Ryan, again. In recent days, he had been trying to contact her, with messages that oscillated between apologies and veiled threats. Sarah ignored the call, as she had been doing for weeks. She picked up Abby and went to the window of the small apartment. The sun was beginning to set, tinting the sky orange. Outside, the city continued its frantic rhythm, indifferent to individual struggles. "We'll make it, my love," she whispered to her daughter, who was playing with a lock of her hair. "Mommy promises we'll be okay." That night, while Abby slept, Sarah opened her notebook. There she kept her most precious dream: plans for a children's school, based on affection and respect for individuality. Drawings, methodologies, pedagogical proposals, a dream that seemed increasingly distant. She closed the notebook and tried to sleep, not knowing that a few miles away, in a mansion in the upscale part of town, Lily was also falling asleep, hugging a doll after asking her father when they would see the supermarket friend and her baby again. 3 weeks passed since the supermarket incident. Eric was in his office when the phone rang. It was Mrs. Coleman, sounding visibly disturbed. "Mr. Eric, Claire just called me. She quit, said she received a better offer and won't be coming anymore." Eric sighed, running his hand through his hair. Claire was the third caretaker for Lily in less than a year. The first had left after receiving a job offer in another state. The second simply didn't have enough patience to deal with the constant questions of a curious child like Lily. And, now what will we do? "I have important meetings in the coming days, presentations for investors. I can't cancel everything. I can stay with the girl for a few days, but you know my back can't handle her pace for too long," replied the housekeeper, who, despite the affection she had for Lily, no longer had the same physical stamina as before. Eric looked at the clock. He had exactly an hour and a half until the next meeting. "I'll try to resolve this today. Call that caretaker agency and see if they have someone available urgently." "Mr. Eric," Mrs. Coleman's voice took on a softer, almost maternal tone, "if I may suggest, perhaps we should look for someone different this time." "Different how?" "Someone who sees beyond the salary. Someone who really likes children and understands Lily. She needs affection, not just supervision. Eric closed his eyes for a moment. He knew the housekeeper was right. Lily was growing, asking questions about the mother she never knew, about family, about belonging. The technical and practical answers he offered were no longer enough. To all. You have someone in mind? My niece Martha works at the community daycare in Springfield. Just yesterday she mentioned a very special young woman who usually brings her small daughter there when she goes job hunting. Trained in education, from what I understand, but having difficulties finding a position because of the baby. Something in the description caught Eric's attention, but he couldn't identify exactly what. Call your niece then, ask for this person's contact information, and schedule an interview for tonight, if possible. Meanwhile, Sarah was adjusting the small bow in Abby's thin hair. The interview scheduled for that afternoon was her last hope. After almost a month of unsuccessful attempts, the money had completely run out. The apartment owner was already threatening eviction, and the food in the pantry was enough for at most 3 more days. Let's look beautiful for the interview, shall we? She said to her daughter, who babbled unintelligible sounds in response. Aunt Martha said it's a great opportunity. A family that needs a caretaker for a 4-year-old girl. Sarah's heart ached at the thought of caring for someone else's child while leaving Abby at the community daycare. But there was no alternative. The job offered a decent salary and the possibility of eventually bringing Abby when necessary. She put on her only decent formal outfit, a navy pencil skirt and a white blouse she had bought for her graduation, and headed to the address indicated. When the bus entered the upscale neighborhood, Sarah felt her stomach churn with nervousness. The imposing houses, the perfectly maintained gardens, everything there seemed to belong to a completely different universe from hers. She got off at the indicated stop and walked for a few minutes until finding the number. She stopped in front of the gate, impressed by the imposing residence. For a moment she almost gave up. What could a woman like her, with her complicated history and her baby in her arms, offer to a family like that? She took a deep breath and rang the intercom. Yes, answered a female voice. Good afternoon, I'm Sarah Anderson. I have an interview scheduled for 5 o'clock. The gate opened with an electronic buzz. Sarah walked through the well-maintained garden to the main door, where a grey-haired lady was waiting for her with a gentle smile. Welcome, my dear. I'm Mrs. Coleman, the housekeeper, and this little princess must be Abby. Sarah nodded, surprised by the warm reception. Come in, please. Mr. Eric is in his office finishing a call. He'll be down in a moment. Sarah was led to a spacious and elegantly decorated room. She sat on the indicated sofa, keeping Abby in her lap. The baby looked around, curious about the new environment. Would you like coffee, tea? Offered Mrs. Coleman. No, thank you. I'm fine. Footsteps coming down the stairs caught the attention of both. Sarah stood up, nervously adjusting her clothes. Mr. Eric, the candidate, has arrived, announced the housekeeper. When Eric entered the room, their eyes met and mutual immediate recognition paralyzed them. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. It was him, the man from the supermarket. You, Eric murmured, equally surprised. Before either could say anything more, an excited shout echoed through the house. Daddy, Daddy! Look who's here. Lily ran down the stairs, her eyes shining with excitement. She stopped abruptly upon seeing Sarah and Abby. It's the supermarket lady and the baby, she exclaimed, running towards them. You came to visit us. I knew you would. Come. The girl approached Abby timidly, who watched her with curiosity. Hi, baby, do you remember me? Sarah, still stunned by the coincidence, forced a smile. Hello, Lily. What a surprise to find you. Eric seemed equally disconcerted. Indeed, an incredible coincidence. Mrs. Coleman observed the scene with interest, realizing there was something unspoken between the adults. You already know each other? We met once by chance, replied Eric, regaining his composure. Please sit down, we can begin the interview. Lily, completely oblivious to the tension in the air, took Abby's hand. Can I show her my toys, please, Daddy? Eric hesitated, but seeing his daughter's pleading look, he gave in. All right, but be careful. Abby is still very small. I know. I'll only show her the soft toys, Lily assured, extending her arms to take the baby. Sarah, instinctively protective, hesitated. "Don't worry," Mrs. Coleman said gently. "I'll go with them. Lily is very careful with younger children." Reluctantly, Sarah allowed Abby to be taken. The baby surprisingly didn't protest, seeming fascinated by the older girl. When they were alone, an awkward silence filled the room. I didn't expect to see you again," Sarah began, feeling the need to break the ice. "Much less like this." "Neither did I," admitted Eric. "My world is quite restricted. Coincidences like this are rare." There was another uncomfortable pause before Eric continued. "About that day at the supermarket, I never had the opportunity to thank you properly," Sarah interrupted. "It was a very generous gesture." Eric made a dismissive gesture with his hand. "It was nothing. Anyone would have done the same." "We both know that's not true," Sarah replied with a slight smile. "But I thank you anyway." Eric nodded, then opened a folder that was on the coffee table. "Let's get to the interview then. I see here that you have a degree in elementary education." "Yes, I completed the course 8 months ago. I did internships at 3 different schools during my undergraduate studies, but I still haven't managed to secure a permanent position in the field." "Because of Abby?" Sarah hesitated, then decided to be honest. "Primarily, schools want someone with total availability of hours, and without a support network, it's complicated." Children's laughter echoed from somewhere in the house, momentarily, breaking the formality of the conversation. "Seems like they're getting along well," commented Eric. "Abby is usually shy with strangers," Sarah observed, surprised. "Your daughter must have a special gift with children." "Lily has a huge heart," Eric said, a trace of pride evident in his voice. "Since that day at the supermarket, she hasn't stopped talking about the baby's friend, as she called you." Sarah smiled, touched. Children have a sensitivity that we often lose with age. The interview proceeded more fluidly after this moment. Eric explained the family's needs, someone who could stay with Lily during the day, help her with early lessons, accompany her to extracurricular activities. The salary offered was almost double what Sarah expected, and there was the possibility of accommodation in the house when necessary. "About Abby," Eric mentioned cautiously. "Normally we wouldn't allow the caretaker to bring a child, but given the circumstances, perhaps we can make a special arrangement." Sarah felt a wave of relief and gratitude. "That would be very important to me. I can guarantee that she wouldn't disrupt anything." Mrs. Coleman returned to the room with the 2 girls. Lily was carefully holding Abby's hand, who was taking hesitant steps. "Daddy, look! Abby almost knows how to walk," exclaimed Lily enthusiastically. "Can I teach her? Please say that Sarah will work here." Eric looked at his daughter, at Sarah and at little Abby. Something in that scene, the 2 children holding hands, Lily's hopeful look, Sarah's silent dignity, touched him deeply. However, an inner voice of caution alerted him. He had learned the hard way that decisions based on emotion rarely ended well. "We need to discuss some practical details before any decision," he said, maintaining a professional tone. "I propose a trial period. 1 week. You and Abby can stay in the guest room at the end of the hallway." "Daddy! A whole week of pajama parties with Abby!" Lily clapped her hands, delighted with the prospect. Sarah blinked, surprised by the offer. "That's very generous, but I don't want to impose. I can perfectly come in the morning and return home at night." "Absolutely not," interrupted Mrs. Coleman. "Mr. Eric often works late, and there are occasional evening events. Having you here would be ideal, at least in this initial phase." Eric nodded. "Besides, it would save you commuting time. The neighborhood where you live is almost an hour from here, isn't it?" Sarah wondered how he knew where she lived, but then remembered that her address was on her resume. "You're right," she admitted. "If it's really not an imposition." "It's decided then," Eric concluded, extending his hand. "Welcome to the team, Sarah." The next morning, Sarah arrived with 2 small suitcases containing her belongings and Abby's. She was greeted by Mrs. Coleman, who led her to the guest room, a spacious environment with a double bed, a crib already set up for Abby, and a view of the backyard garden. "Mr. Eric had the crib installed last night," explained the housekeeper. "He said he found it in the attic, but actually he had it delivered in a rush." Sarah smiled, touched by the consideration. He seems to be a good man despite the formality. He is, confirmed Mrs. Coleman, arranging the curtains. He just built high walls around his heart after his wife left him, taking everything she could convert to money. It was shortly after they discovered they couldn't have children naturally. I'm sorry, Sarah murmured. That must have been devastating. It was. Eric immersed himself in work, became one of the most respected businessmen in the sector. But he lived like an automaton until he decided to have Lily. Even with his daughter, he maintains emotional distance from everyone, except me sometimes, because I've known him since he was a boy. Sarah. They absorbed this information, understanding better the reserved man who had hired her. The first hours were for adaptation. Lily wouldn't leave Abby's side, showing her every corner of the house, presenting each doll from her vast collection. Sarah observed, amazed at the patience the girl showed with her daughter. At lunchtime, Eric arrived unexpectedly. He normally lunched at the office, but that day, he explained, he wanted to check if everything was going well. The meal proceeded in a surprisingly pleasant atmosphere. Lily talked non-stop, telling her father how Abby had almost spoken when she showed her favorite teddy bear. She said, "Bah, I'm sure she meant bear," insisted the girl. Eric smiled, a smile that Sarah noticed didn't completely reach his eyes. It was as if part of him remained vigilant, cautious. The following days established a routine. Sarah woke up early, prepared Abby, then helped Lily with her breakfast and prepared her for school. While the girl was in class, she took the opportunity to organize educational activities, study online, and take care of Abby. In the afternoon, when Lily returned, the three spent hours in creative activities. Sarah introduced educational games that disguised learning as fun. Gradually, she realized that Lily, despite her apparent joy, carried a deep loneliness. The girl absorbed attention and affection like a thirsty sponge. On the fourth day, while the girls were taking a nap in the living room, Lily had insisted on sleeping next to the baby. Sarah found Eric watching them from the doorway. "They seem at peace," he commented in a low voice. "They're like sisters who just found each other," Sarah replied, smiling. Eric agreed with a nod. "Lily has never connected like this with anyone. Not even with me, sometimes." "Children miss a maternal figure," Sarah risked saying. "No matter how present and loving a father is, there's a different bond." Eric was silent for a few moments, as if pondering those words. "How was your training in education?" he asked, deliberately changing the subject. "Intense. I worked throughout the course to support myself. When I discovered the pregnancy in the second to last semester, I thought I wouldn't make it. But it was precisely Abby who gave me the strength to finish." "And her father?" Sarah hesitated. She didn't usually talk about Ryan. "He's not present. It was better that way." Eric perceived the discomfort and didn't insist. Instead, he surprised Sarah with an unexpected proposal. "I've noticed your interest in alternative early childhood education. I saw the books you brought, the notebooks with notes. You have interesting ideas." Sarah blushed. "Just dreams of a recent graduate." "Dreams are the first step to concrete achievements," he countered. "If someday you want to transform them into a real project, I have contacts who might be interested." That night, after putting the girls to bed, Sarah allowed herself to dream of possibilities that, until then, had seemed completely out of reach. On the morning of the 6th day, an unforeseen event. Abby woke up with a fever. Sarah, distressed, was preparing to take her to the emergency room when Eric appeared at the door. "What happened?" he asked, alarmed at seeing Sarah's state of concern. "Abby has a high fever. I need to take her to the doctor." Eric approached, touching the baby's forehead. "I'll call Dr. Mitchell. He's been attending my family for years and can come immediately." Before Sarah could protest, he was already on the phone. In less than 40 minutes, a kind-looking gentleman was examining Abby. "Just a mild viral infection. Common in babies this age," he diagnosed. "Antipyretic every 6 hours and plenty of fluids. If the fever persists for more than 2 days, call me again." Sarah thanked him, relieved. When the doctor left, Eric had already reorganized his day's schedule. "I'll stay home today," he announced. "I can work in the office here and help with the girls." "You don't need to change your routine for our sake," Sarah protested. Lily may also need attention while you care for Abby, he argued, with irrefutable logic. That was a revealing day. Sarah observed Eric interacting with Lily in a way she hadn't witnessed before. He read stories, participated in games, prepared special snacks. At night, when Abby had another fever spike, it was he who took her in his arms, walking down the hallway, humming softly until she fell asleep. "You're good with children," Sarah commented, when Eric finally placed Abby in the crib. "I had a good teacher this week," he replied with a less restrained smile than usual. The next morning, the fever had subsided. Abby had her appetite back, babbling animatedly. Eric, who was already ready to leave, stopped at the bedroom door to say goodbye. "The trial weekends tomorrow," he reminded. Sarah felt a tightness in her chest. In the last few days, she had allowed herself to forget the precariousness of her situation, the temporality of that arrangement. "You're right," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Tomorrow we'll talk about your decision." Eric seemed to want to say something more, but limited himself to nodding and leaving. That afternoon, while the girls were playing in the garden under Sarah's watchful eye, her cell phone rang. It was Ryan. In recent weeks, he had intensified his attempts at contact. Sarah rejected the call, as she always did, but seconds later a message arrived. "I know where you are, who you're with, and with my daughter. Don't think you'll run away forever." Sarah felt her blood freeze. How could Ryan know? Had he followed her? Trembling, she put the phone in her pocket. She needed to stay calm in front of the children. Later, she shared her concern with Mrs. Coleman. "Don't worry, my dear," the housekeeper reassured. "This house has security, cameras, everything. And Ryan wouldn't be the first ex-partner to make empty threats." "He can be always unpredictable," Sarah confessed, avoiding going into details about the episodes of control and manipulation that had marked their relationship. "Trust me, you and Abby are safe here." That night, Eric came home earlier. He found everyone in the living room, Sarah, Abby, Lily, and Mrs. Coleman, involved in an improvised puppet theater session. He stopped at the door, observing the scene with an expression that Sarah couldn't decipher. "Daddy," Lily exclaimed upon noticing him, "come see the theater that Sarah invented. I'm the princess and Abby is the baby dragon." Eric smiled and joined the group, sitting on the carpet next to Sarah. For a moment they seemed like any other family, imperfect, under construction, but genuine. Later, after the children fell asleep, Eric invited Sarah for a conversation in his office. Her heart accelerated, anticipating the decision about her permanence. "I realized something important this week," he began, pouring himself a glass of water. "Lily is different, calmer, more secure, and, at the same time, more expressive." "She's an incredible child," Sarah replied. "So intelligent, so loving." "Yes, she is, but she needed something that I alone couldn't offer." He paused, as if carefully choosing his next words. "Sarah, I want to propose something beyond the caretaker job." Sarah felt her heart race, unsure about what would come next. "I want you and Abby to stay," Eric continued, "not just as an employee and the employee's daughter, but as part of this house." "I don't understand," Sarah murmured, confused. Eric ran his hand through his hair, visibly uncomfortable with the vulnerability the situation required. "For years, I transformed this house into a functional environment, but without soul. Lily had everything money could buy, but something essential was missing. You brought that in just 1 week." Sarah remained silent, too surprised to formulate a response. "I'm proposing a family partnership agreement," Eric explained, returning to the pragmatic tone that was familiar to him. "You would continue with your responsibilities as Lily's caretaker, but you would also have freedom to develop your school project. I can offer the initial capital and contacts. In exchange, you and Abby would become a permanent part of our domestic arrangement." "Are you offering me a family contract?" Sarah asked between incredulity and irony. Eric smiled slightly, acknowledging the absurdity of the situation. "Put that way, it sounds strange, but yes, basically that's it. I'm not talking about romantic feelings or anything like that. just recognizing that there's a positive synergy between the four of us. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to process everything. I need to be honest with you, Eric. There are complications in my life. Abby's father, he's been making threats. I don't want to bring problems to your door. This house has one of the best security systems in the city, he replied, without hesitation. And I have resources to ensure additional protection if necessary. The conversation was interrupted by a cry coming from the children's room. It was Abby. We can continue tomorrow, Sarah suggested, standing up. I need to check. Eric nodded. Of course. And Sarah, don't feel pressured. Regardless of your decision about my proposal, the job as caretaker is guaranteed. The next morning, a surprise awaited everyone. An elegant woman, approximately 60 years old, arrived without warning. It was Barbara, Eric's mother, and Lily's. Grandmother! Grandma! Lily shouted, running to hug her. My little princess, exclaimed Barbara, hugging her granddaughter. Her eyes, however, fixed on Sarah and Abby, who were in the living room. And who might these people be? Eric, who was coming down the stairs at that moment, stopped abruptly. Mother, I wasn't expecting your visit. Clearly, Barbara replied, with a tense smile. I tried calling several times, but you never answer. The tension in the air was palpable. Sarah, feeling out of place, stood up. I'll take Abby upstairs while you talk. That's not necessary, Eric intervened. Sarah is Lily's new caretaker, and this is her daughter, Abby. Barbara examined Sarah from head to toe, not disguising her disapproval. Interesting arrangement. Caretakers now come with children included. In the package. Mother, please, Eric murmured, embarrassed. Grandma. Abby is my little sister now, Lily declared innocently. Sarah teaches us songs and makes tasty cakes, and she doesn't yell when we spill juice. Barbara raised her eyebrows. I see. Well, I came to talk about the proposal I sent you last week, about Lily spending some time with me in Europe. We've already discussed this, Eric replied in a firm tone. Lily stays. This is her home. Her routine is established here. A routine that apparently includes unconventional domestic arrangements, Barbara retorted, looking significantly at Sarah. I'll leave you in private, Sarah insisted, picking up Abby. As she climbed the stairs, she could hear the beginning of a heated discussion in the living room. Words like stability, appropriate influence, and hasty decisions reached her ears. In the room, Sarah sat on the bed, holding Abby against her chest. Eric's proposal, which already seemed surreal last night, was now further complicated with the arrival of the disapproving grandmother. Perhaps it would be best to step back, accept only the job, keep the boundaries clear. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Mrs. Coleman. May I come in, dear? Sarah nodded. The housekeeper sat beside her. Don't worry about Barbara. She shows up every 3 or 4 months, makes impossible demands, and then returns to her life in Europe. She never really wanted to be involved in her granddaughter's upbringing. Still, she is Lily's grandmother. Blood family. Family is more than blood, Sarah. It's daily choice, constant presence, love demonstrated in small things. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes. I don't know if I have the right to enter their lives this way. Lily deserves stability, not a stranger with a baby and a problematic ex-partner. The stability Lily needs is emotional, not formal, Mrs. Coleman replied, taking Sarah's hands. In 1 week, you gave her more emotional security than Barbara in 4 years. The door opened again. It was Lily, her eyes watery. Sarah, are you and Abby leaving? Grandma said you're not our real family. Sarah felt her heart tighten. She opened her arms and Lily ran to them, hiding her face in her shoulder. I don't want you to leave, sobbed the girl. I love you. Oh, sweetheart. Sarah hugged her tight. We love you too. Eric appeared at the door, his face tense but determined. Lily, your grandmother wants to say goodbye. She's leaving now. She was angry, Lily murmured. Yes, she was. Adults sometimes get angry when things don't happen the way they want. Lily hesitated, looking at Sarah. You'll stay, won't you? Sarah looked at Eric, seeking an answer. "If Sarah wants to, they will stay," he replied, surprising her with the firmness in his voice. "This house belongs to them now, too." After Lily left to say goodbye to her grandmother, Eric approached Sarah. "I'm sorry for my mother's behavior. She's always been difficult." "I understand her concern," Sarah replied. "It must seem strange, even suspicious, that suddenly you welcome a woman and a baby who are practically strangers." "My mother doesn't worry about Lily or me," Eric said bitterly. "She worries about appearances, about what others will think. It's always been that way." A shout of joy from downstairs interrupted the conversation. It was Abby, who apparently had taken her first steps alone in the living room, while Lily encouraged her. The four gathered to celebrate the milestone. Even Barbara, who had not yet left, observed the scene with an undecided expression, as if reassessing her judgments. "I've never seen Lily so excited," she commented almost reluctantly. "Not even with those expensive toys I brought her from Paris." "Children need connection more than presents, Mother," Eric replied. Barbara said goodbye shortly after, not without casting a final evaluating look at Sarah. "Take good care of them," she said, surprising everyone with that near approval. In the weeks that followed, a new rhythm was established in the house. Sarah and Eric refined the details of their unusual agreement. She would officially be Lily's caretaker, but also a partner in the development of a small experimental children's school, which would begin with only 10 students in the following semester. Abby grew, now walking more confidently, speaking her first words. One of them, which left Eric visibly moved, sounded suspiciously like "Daddy" when he arrived home from work one night. Time passed. Weekends became sacred, dedicated exclusively to family activities. Picnics in the park, home movie nights, culinary experiments in the kitchen, always with Eric's active participation, who gradually let work occupy less space in his life. 3. Months after Sarah and Abby's arrival, a picnic in the city park brought a revealing moment. A family sitting near them commented about that couple with the 2 beautiful daughters. Neither Sarah nor Eric corrected the misunderstanding. On the way back, they exchanged looks that said more than words. That night, after the girls fell asleep, Eric invited Sarah for a glass of wine on the terrace. "Something happened today," he began. "When that family confused us with a conventional couple, I realized that it didn't bother me. In fact, it seemed right." Sarah smiled slightly. "I noticed that too. It's funny how labels lose importance when the essence is present. Sarah, in these months, you transformed a house into a home, transformed a routine into life." "We all transformed," she replied, "including you. The Eric I met at the supermarket would never admit he needs someone." He smiled, acknowledging the truth in those words. "We need to talk about the future, about us." Sarah felt her heart race. "Us?" "Yes, Lily calls you Mom when she thinks I'm not listening. Abby calls me Daddy openly. We are, for all intents and purposes, a family. Maybe it's time to make it official." "Are you proposing to me?" Sarah asked between surprise and amusement. "I'm proposing an official partnership," Eric replied, with the same pragmatic tone as always, but a different sparkle in his eyes. "Legal, emotional in every sense. A commitment. But yes, if you prefer to call it marriage, that works too." Sarah laughed. "You really don't know how to be romantic, do you?" "It was never my strong point," he admitted, smiling. "But I can learn. I have an excellent teacher." 1 year later, in a simple ceremony in the garden of the house, Sarah and Eric formalized their union. Lily and Abby, now inseparable, were the flower girls. Mrs. Coleman moved, occupied the place of the bride's mother. Even Barbara attended, bringing extravagant gifts and, more importantly, a new respect for the unconventional family her son had built. On the same day, Eric signed the papers recognizing the socio-affective paternity of Abby, guaranteeing her the same legal rights as Lily. The small children's school idealized by Sarah became a reality, occupying a space annexed to the residence. With only 15 students, it focused on a pedagogy based on affection and respect for the individuality of each child. It quickly gained recognition in the educational community for its innovative approach. Eric continued at the forefront of his businesses, but with reorganized priorities. No meeting was more important than the girls' school presentation. No contract was worth the time lost from the first discoveries, the small daily achievements. On a Sunday afternoon, almost 2 years after that supermarket encounter, the family was enjoying a peaceful moment in the garden. Lily, now 6 years old, was reading a story to Abby, who at 3 years old already showed the same love for books. Eric and Sarah watched from a distance, hands intertwined. "You know what I think sometimes?" commented Eric. "How everything could have been different if I hadn't been in that supermarket on that specific day. Or if I hadn't needed to return that can of milk," completed Sarah. "Life is made of these seemingly insignificant moments that change everything." "It wasn't insignificant to me," Eric said, squeezing her hand slightly. "Seeing you in that line with Abby in your arms, trying to maintain dignity while returning the milk, that reminded me of my own mother years ago, and it made me want to be the person that nobody was for her." "And you were," Sarah smiled. "For both of us." "You were too, for me and Lily. Maybe that's what family really means, being for each other what the world wasn't." The children ran to them, interrupting the moment with laughter and requests for ice cream. The afternoon continued like so many others, filled with small joys, simple conversations, plans for the future. That night, after putting the girls to bed, Sarah stopped in the hallway between the bedrooms. She remembered how it all began: the desperation at the supermarket, the humiliation of returning her daughter's milk, the unexpected gesture of a stranger. How could she imagine that that moment of fragility would transform into the beginning of such a beautiful journey? Eric found her there, lost in thoughts. He hugged her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how life can completely change in an instant, about how small choices can lead to enormous transformations." "Like returning a can of milk?" he asked with a smile in his voice. "Exactly," she replied, turning to face him. "Thank you for paying for that can of milk." "Thank you for teaching me that some things are worth much more than money," he replied, kissing her softly. In the Ardisa next room, Lily was whispering to Abby before sleeping. "Did you know that Mom and Dad met because of a can of milk?" "Mom, Sarah told me. She was going to return the milk at the store because she didn't have money, then Dad paid for it. That's how it all started. Cool, right?" Abby nodded sleepily. "Very cool. I love milk." "I love milk too," agreed Lily, hugging her sister. "And I love you and Mom and Dad." "Family," murmured Abby, almost asleep. "Yes," confirmed Lily, closing her eyes. "Our family." The end, dear listeners. We hope that Sarah and Eric's story has touched your hearts. To follow more exciting journeys like this one, we've prepared a special playlist with equally engaging stories. Find it here, clicking on the left. If this narrative stirred emotions in you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your like on the video. Daily, we bring unique stories that explore the complexities of life and the encounters that transform destinies. Share in the comments if ever